Welcome. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. Always appreciative of all the support. We're going to talk about a polarizing topic today. Matt LaFleur, and he is under fire from a lot of Packer fans after Sunday's loss to Carolina. Is Matt LaFleur the sole reason the Packers lost to Bryce Young and the Panthers? Some will actually say yes. Many will say no. It's been a polarizing topic throughout the week. Thought I would jump in with some thoughts and not, shock, jock, value sort of thoughts. But we're just going to call a spade with some of this stuff today because if you look on really primarily X on Twitter, the supporters for Matt LaFleur will still come out and say, hey, he is, 72, 35, and 1 overall as the head coach since taking over for the Packers. It's an incredible 67% win percentage. Yada, yada, yada. First 2 years with Jordan Love after the transition from Jordan Love, the passing of the torch. 2 years with Love, 2 playoff appearances, a playoff win in Dallas, so on and so forth. The detractors will say, dating back to 2022, they'll say, yeah, he's 72, 35, and 1 overall. But dating back to 2022, that record is 33, 25, and 1, which, you're still above 500. You're clear by 8 games, but is it really that impressive? Is it getting to the standard of what you kind of think or want or expect for Green Bay? And so there's two very, very different sides of the coin. There's a Twitter account. The guy's name is Eli. It's like Book of Eli NFL or something. And his stuff, just for my algorithm being a lot of Packers on X, his stuff will pop up on my timeline once in a while. And I actually thought he put it very well after the loss to Carolina. He said, Matt LaFleur is one of the best at play design and scheming guys open, but as an actual play caller and game manager, he struggles tremendously far too often. And to me, a lot of these problems, issues that are arising, and they're not coming, to the forefront for the first time. It's not new, right? Year 7 of Matt LaFleur, right? Year 7 as the head coach. A lot of the stuff we saw in Carolina, that we saw in Dallas, it's not new. It's just popping up. It's becoming far too often a trend for Green Bay and a trend that you want to see kind of get nipped in the bud. And so I thought that put it well. Matt LaFleur is one of the best at play design, scheming guys open. As an actual play caller, game manager, he struggles tremendously far too often. And when I saw that, I was like, that kind of bottles up quite a few of my thoughts on this ongoing topic. And we know that, no coach is perfect. Like, we get that. The one game this year that really, really, really opened my eyes to some frustrating inefficiencies and waffling as a game manager came in the game against the Dallas Cowboys. And I want to point out 2 separate instances in that game that Green Bay could not have veered in a more different direction in 2 critical moments of that game. Against Dallas, this is back in week 4, folks. Green Bay took over after a Dallas score. 1st and 10 at its own 20. So this isn't too hard to, visualize. Green Bay had it 1st and 10 at its own 20. 41 seconds left in the first half, not the first quarter. 41 seconds left in the first half against the Cowboys. 1 timeout, leading 13-9. So they're up 13-9, 1st and 10 at their own 20. 40 seconds left till half, 1 timeout. LaFleur decides to be aggressive. He decides, we're going to try to add more points. We're going to try to pick up a couple chunk plays, get in range for Brandon McManus, go up 16-9 at half. I love it. Why not? I was completely fine with that decision, with that choice. You keep your foot on the gas. You show a belief in your quarterback and this offense and the young pieces surrounding your quarterback. After 2 incompletions on 1st down and 2nd down, 3rd down provided a 12-yard gain via the air to Tucker Kraft and a moving of the sticks for Green Bay. The Packers then got tagged for a false start, and we'll talk about penalties at some point in this video. And because of that false start, drawing what would have been a 10-second runoff, Green Bay says, boom, we're going to take our last time out. At that point, it is now 1st and 15 at your own 27. So you haven't really accomplished much. It's 1st and 15 at your own 27. Now you have no timeouts, and there's only 20 seconds left until halftime. At that point, it didn't work. It was sloppy. There were 2 incompletions. There was a penalty. Yes, there's a 12-yard gain and a moving of the sticks sandwiched between what was not a pretty scene, not an offense working in rhythm, working in symmetry together with one another as they tried to move down the field and get into field goal range. So you could think at that point, like, man, we're still at our own 27. It's not 1st and 10, it's 1st and 15. We have no timeouts. There's 20 seconds left till half. Take a knee. Maybe run the ball once. You're up 13-9 at the break. You can cut your ties. LaFleur didn't, and there's a part of me that's still okay with that. Some people would be like, what are we thinking at this point? Watching that game live, because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, people can point out and be like, hindsight's 2020. I'm going to tell you exactly what I was thinking in those moments. And even when Green Bay burned that last time out, there's just 20 seconds left now till half. It's 1st and 15 at your own 27. When they came out on that next play and aired it out, and then we know what happened the following play, I was still okay with it. I was like, you know what? You're just being aggressive. You're not pivoting off that point from the start of this drive to now. Fine, let's go for it, Jordan Love, we obviously know, ends up getting strip sacked. The Cowboys score one play later. And what should have been, hey, worst case scenario is we're up 13-9 at half, turned into a disaster where it's like you're now down 16-13 at the break. And yet still, despite that disaster of a sequence at the end of the first half in Jerry World, I was still fine with LaFleur choosing to be aggressive and sticking with it, even with the offense having faced a little bit of adversity and a little bit of up and down, riding the roller coaster on the first few plays of that sequence. I was fine with it. Didn't like the results, obviously. Much rather would go up 13-9 at half than down 16-13, but I wasn't going to look at it and say, because of what the results were, it's going to influence how I viewed the decision-making from LaFleur. He chose to be uber aggressive in that spot. It did not work out. It went drastically the other direction. I was still okay with LaFleur's game-managing decision-making in that moment. In that very same game, in the second half in overtime, the Packers had a chance to stomp on Dallas and still sneak out of there with a win. Instead, we saw play calling that showed a coach and an offense as a result of the play calling that shelled up, that got conservative, that lacked a backbone, and really played not to lose that game. It was a complete 180 to what we saw at the end of the first half, where it's, foot on the accelerator, pedal to the metal, whatever cliche you want to use. And even when we face a little bump in the road with a false start, could be a 10-second runoff. We're going to take our last time out with 20 seconds to go until intermission. But we're still going to come out and still try to sling this thing and get into field goal range. And you get the strip sack, and then Dallas scores. But you were aggressive. You were super aggressive in that moment. I was okay with that. I was fine with it, even though the results weren't great. End of the game, overtime. Completely different team. The operation looks completely different. And I get it's like, hey, how the game unfolds is how things can get dictated, how things need to be managed. This sequence where Green Bay in overtime against Dallas holds the Cowboys to a field goal, it's 40-37. Now the Packers get their crack at it offensively, and there's plenty of time left to try to navigate down the field and score what would be a walk-off touchdown in a win in Jerry World. Instead, that entire drive, Green Bay lacked a spine in it, and it was a direct reflection to me of the clock management, the game management, and the play calling. They played not to lose that game. And quite frankly, at the end, they just ran out of time. And quite literally almost ran out of time. You remember Jordan Love took that snap, tried throwing to Golden in the end zone, ball hit the turf with 1 second left, and McManus came out, kicked a field goal, and you leave Dallas with a 40-40 tie. And nobody likes to end in a tie game. We just saw, Jacksonville and Las Vegas played an overtime game this weekend, and Las Vegas scored a touchdown to tie it after Jacksonville had scored a touchdown, and Pete Carroll said, let's go for 2. I'm completely, I'm good with that. You kick the extra point, and I don't think there was much time left either. So they go for 2, they go for the jugular, don't get it, but you're fine with that decision. I was not fine with how Green Bay orchestrated things on that overtime possession. It paled in comparison to what we saw in that same game at the end of the first half. And so they ran out of time. They settled for a field goal in the same game. We saw, again, it wasn't just 2 slight differences. We saw 2 extremely different sides of the spectrum when it came to game managing and play calling. And that's where I think a lot of the disconnect exists with the pocket of Packer fans that are growing more and more frustrated with the head coach. I get it from that aspect. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciative of all the support. Then a few weeks later, Green Bay's playing in Arizona, and it's another crunch time game. And the Packers, again, I'm talking about LaFleur, game managing, play calling, things of that nature, clock management especially. Green Bay's trailing Arizona, folks. Not too difficult to understand. Green Bay's trailing Arizona 23-20. 2 minutes, 32 seconds left. They have a 4th and 2 at the Cardinals' 29-yard line. Matt LaFleur sends out the field goal unit. We're gonna send out Havrasek for, what is that, a 46-yard field goal. We're going to tie it up with around 2:30 to go. Again, when he sent Havrasek out, I was like, kind of wish they would have gone for it, but I get it. I'm fine with it. Am I mad that they're kicking or attempting a game-tying field goal with 2:30 left? No, I was okay with that decision by LaFleur. Now, after sending out the field goal unit and pondering things, apparently, instead of thinking ahead like the entire staff should have been, including LaFleur, who's, the head of the snake, LaFleur says, boom, we're going to burn a timeout, send the offense back out there. And my first thought is, you should know when you called a 3rd and 1, and it was a run play that went for -1 yard and set up that 4th and 2, you should know going into the 3rd and 1, here's what we're going to do if A, B, C, D, E happens, right? If we get the first down, great, the drive continues. If we lose 1 yard, 4th and 2, we're still going to go for it. If we pass it and it's a sack, we're going to send out the field goal unit. You have to be thinking a play ahead in those exact situations. The waffling of, again, I was fine. I wanted them to go for it, but sending out the kicker to try to tie it up late, I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with sending out the kicking unit and then being, no, we're going to burn one. Those timeouts are very, 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 very important in this exact situation, especially considering Green Bay earlier in the half, Arizona did not hesitate on offense, near midfield, a 4th and 1, and they're like, we're going to keep the offense out there and go for it. And Green Bay was like discombobulated, had to take a timeout. And so they burned this one with 2:32 left. You're down to 1 timeout. And so you now send the offense back out on the field in what's kind of like a do-or-die scenario. Yes, you still have a timeout plus the 2-minute warning, but if you don't get that 4th down conversion and you only have 1 timeout instead of 2, it takes probably 1 Arizona first down, and then they're in victory formation. And so, again, the decision to kick it, I was fine with it. Had they from the rip said, we're going to go for it on 4th and 2, I'm fine with it. I have a harder time accepting and processing and digesting, sending the kicking unit out there, and then being like, yeah, no, let's change our mind. Boom, burn a timeout and go for it. Now, thankfully for the Packers and really thankfully for LaFleur, or else you talk about game management questions, clock management questions, it would have really come to a boiling point had he pulled the kicking unit off the field, taken the timeout, sent the offense back out there. They don't get it, and then the Packers lose 23-20. Instead, Green Bay did convert the 4th down to Tucker Kraft. Later on that drive, scored what would become a game-winning touchdown drive in what was a 27-23 victory, and they escaped Arizona with that win. And despite getting the win, it does not excuse that you have to know what you will do next in those crunch time moments. Now, LaFleur said after the Arizona game that when he really changed his mind was when he saw Jordan Love come off the field and he saw, in LaFleur's words, the disdain on his face. Love wanted to go for it and was clearly upset afterwards. But then LaFleur said in his quote after the game, he saw the disdain on Love's face and he said, then I looked up at the clock and realized how much time was left. And when I heard him say that, I was like, maybe it's not, maybe I don't need to look into this as deeply as what the quote is. But part of me was thinking, were you not truly aware that, like, there's 2:30 left? We have 2 timeouts now, one after we take this one and pull the kicking. Like, were you not aware of the exact circumstances going on? So it was weird. And then the one that really got me, at least, let me know what you guys and gals think about all this, because there is a lot of chatter about Matt LaFleur, and I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, he needs to be fired right now, but there's a lot of people where it's like, man, this is year 7, and a lot of the problems we saw in year 1 or 2 haven't gotten better, haven't gone away. It's still popping up on the radar, and it's popping up far too frequently. So let me know what you guys and gals think. The one this past weekend against Carolina, it simply put, if you didn't catch it, didn't watch it, didn't hear about it, didn't see it, whatever, Green Bay's down 13-6. There's 11 minutes left. They have their timeouts. It's 4th and 8 at the Carolina 13. LaFleur did not hesitate. Offense stayed out of the field. They went for it. They did not get it. Again, hindsight can be 20/20. Had Green Bay gone for it, got the touchdown, we're all like, wow, what a gutsy call, so on and so forth. I'm telling you, when they broke that huddle offensively, I was like, man, this is not this is not 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. This is 4th and 8. So immediately the averages aren't going to be in your favor as heavily as you would like. And then you consider it's at the 13-yard line of the opposition. So you're like, hey, we're in the red zone. But it's also a very, very condensed part of the field. When you get into that red zone, things really start to squish together. You got 22 players on the field in a very condensed part of the field. And you don't need to go 1, 2, or 3 yards. You need to go 8 to move the sticks, 13 to get to the end zone. And so it becomes incredibly more difficult to try to draw something up, come up with something where you can either get the first down or get the touchdown on that play. And we all know Jordan Love was flushed to his right, back to his left, through cross-body, cross-field, a pass that should have been picked off, might have had a chance to get ran back quite literally like 103, 104 yards for a touchdown, but thankfully fell right through the grasp of the Carolina DB and incomplete. At that time, I'm telling you, because again, hindsight 20/20, points are at a premium. Your defense has only given up 13 points at that time, but Carolina had sustained a couple of long drives and were really leaning on Rico Dowdle. But in that spot, it's 4th and 8 at the 13. There's still 11 minutes left. Like I said, it wasn't 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, and it wasn't like Arizona where there's 2:32 left, and certainly you would consider going for it instead of kicking the field goal to make it 13-9 at that stage. There's 11 minutes left. Your defense hasn't surrendered many points. You would trust them to get off the field because Bryce Young in the passing game had offered nothing, and then you hopefully go down the field and get a touchdown drive that would put you ahead. Instead, Green Bay goes for it. They don't get it. Ironically, they do get the ball back, go down the field, and score a touchdown. But instead of putting them up 16-13, it tied it at 13-13, and then we know the rest of how that book was written, and Carolina comes out on top 16-13. I'm telling you, at the time of that, I was like, it is going to be pretty damn difficult to draw something up here, again, where everything starts to shrink in that red zone, and you need 8 yards just to move the 6 from the 13-yard line. It's hard, like, I don't want to sit here and say, man, I hate that they were aggressive. I don't think, logically speaking, that was the correct choice to make in that moment. Even had they converted, I would have told you in the instant reaction video, like, man, that was gutsy. It took some balls, this, that, and the other, but it wasn't really crazy about the decision to go for it there. And so I know a lot of people are pointing to that exact play, that exact moment in the game against the Panthers. And the one thing that we've kind of come to learn with LaFleur is the moments that he is choosing for the offense to be aggressive or to not be aggressive, it's just wildly unpredictable in a not so great way. Like, it's good to keep the defense guessing. It's good to keep the opposition guessing. But we're at a point now where you're also keeping your own offense guessing. And things aren't working in some of these crunch time moments in perfect harmony as you hope that they kind of would be. Again, I'm pointing out this is not a Matt LaFleur, bash fest video by any stretch of the imagination. That's not what this is. I believe he's a good coach. I believe he's a quality head coach. But the weaknesses pop up way more than they should, and it's often in the same categories, and that's where some of this doubt and worry can start to creep in for Packer fans. And if you want me to say, here's what I really think, if LaFleur was given truth serum and spoke his piece about how things currently are, this is not spanning throughout his entire tenure with Green Bay, but more so some of the inconsistencies and inefficiencies we've seen with when they're choosing to be aggressive and when they're not, because it really seems to be they're just shooting at the hip. Like, it's wildly unpredictable. It doesn't make a ton of sense at times. I think if you gave LaFleur truth serum, he would say that, and he would never admit this under any circumstance, nor should he, but I wonder how much he trust Jordan Love. Now, again, whether or not you do, I do, different topic for a different day. But if you just look at the play calling week in and week out and how it goes from let's have some fun, torch the opposing defense, I've got Jordan Love, he's got a rocket arm, he's been pretty damn consistent this year, let's roll. And then at other times it's run, pass, run, pass, run, and it's in crunch time, and it's when, hey, we could use a good gain in the passing game, or we could try to take a shot here or there, and but we don't see it, and they kind of, again, shell up and they curl up with the play calling on offense, and it's a radical difference from 1 week to the next, from one possession to the next within the same game. To me, that's a problem. I wonder if there's even a sliver of him that's like, I don't truly trust yet Love to the degree that he did Rodgers. Of course, Rodgers, future Hall of Famer, generational quarterback, all that good stuff. The other problem I have is I think the penalties. I brought this up in so many videos. You have to live with some penalties. Like, you just do. They suck. They're annoying. They're frustrating. But every team gets penalized. And so you have to live with some of them. The pre-snap penalties, the undisciplined penalties, those are the ones that'll drive anyone nuts. And the Packers haven't been better than 23rd in the NFL in total penalties per game on average since 2022. They haven't been better than 23rd. This year, they're 27th in the NFL on the wrong side of things. You know, they're penalized the fifth most of any team in the NFL. And again, you have to live with some of them because they're going to happen every week. But the false starts, illegal formation, lining up in the neutral zone, like things like that. Remember when Cleveland made the walk-off kick? I hate to bring up that. I'm slicing open a wound and just dousing salt into it. Remember when Cleveland made that walk-off field goal to beat Green Bay in Week 3 with 13-10, I think was the final score? Had that kick missed from the Browns kicker, they would have had another shot at it because Green Bay was offsides. Like, those are the penalties, the false starts. You know, there was a drive where Green Bay was moving and grooving the second drive of the game. You know, you drive right down the field, the opening drive Sunday, you fumble in the red zone. I'm not really going to put the fumble on Matt LaFleur's plate and be like, dang it, that's on Matt LaFleur. That's it. Like, I'm not going to do that. Second drive, you drive right back down the field, and you're in the red zone again. You're knocking on the door, and then you get a false start, and then you get another false start, and then there's a sack, and then there's a drop pass on 3rd and 23 to Emmanuel Wilson. And it's like those two false starts kind of blew up the drive. Now, the sack wasn't great. The drop pass wasn't great. But the two false starts that preceded the other errors kind of ruined that drive. And those pre-snap penalties, because I bring it up so often, and some of you who watch the majority of these videos, first off, I appreciate you again. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. It takes 3 seconds to do. Costs you nothing. Helps me immensely as I try to build up the channel. The pre-snap penalties are the ones that drive me absolutely insane. And the penalties overall, again, we're seeing Green Bay dating back to 2022. It hasn't been better than 23rd in the NFL in penalties per game. Again, I like Matt LaFleur. I'm glad he's Green Bay's coach at this moment. But there is no doubt, even if you're the biggest Matt LaFleur supporter, there is no doubting that the pressure is starting to dial up. And you look at what Ed Policy had said a few months ago, taking over for Mark Murphy. He doesn't like lame duck coaches when it comes to their contract. Well, if Matt LaFleur exits this year, enters next year, still at the controls for Green Bay without an extension, we're in that exact situation. He would be entering the final year of his contract. So I think the new regime in terms of policy taking over for Murphy also plays a part in the pressure that I'm talking about that is starting to mount and build. Now, you zoom out the microscope, Green Bay is still 5-2-1. Matt LaFleur said the line, we still have everything in front of us after the loss to the Panthers, which a lot of people are like, of course he said that. But I think there's a lot of different angles. There's a lot of tentacles to this where it all balls up and you can see where the pressure is coming from that Matt LaFleur is going to have to deal with directly. And if he wants to deal with it indirectly in some capacity, that's fine too. The one line that I have seen Packer fans take, at least some of them, and we'll take the Packers angle and the LaFleur angle out of this. There is a line that I see, and again, it's more in general in sports terms with coaches who may or may not be on a hot seat, may or may not have, pressure starting to mount a little bit. And I've seen it with LaFleur and the Packers directly. And that is when people say, well, who are you going to get that's better? Put Matt LaFleur aside for a second, because if you are in the camp of, well, who are you going to get that's better? And again, I'm not even talking LaFleur or the Packers. If that is a sports take and a hill that you die on with any sports team, any head coach, any OC, DC, whatever you want to talk about, If your line is, well, who are you going to get that's better? It's a prerogative that will have you stuck in purgatory. It is. The worry about who are you going to get that's better, it could be so much worse, is just like you're content with the status quo. You're content with what could be an average product. And I'm not saying, again, Green Bay and LaFleur is an average product. I'm saying take that aside for a second. I've seen too many people, when talking about LaFleur and those that are saying, man, I'm getting fed up with this, and people say, well, who are you going to get that's better? I cannot stand that take. I grew up in Iowa. Where Kirk Ferentz has been the head football coach for the Hawkeyes for 27 years, and he's a damn good coach. Kirk Ferentz is widely loved, widely respected as a head coach. 27 years, damn near 3 decades. However, as time has gone along, you live to accept, if you're an Iowa Hawkeye fan, and again, I saw this growing up in Iowa, you sort of live to expect that, hey, we're probably going to be 8-4, maybe 9-3, and once in a blue moon, we'll have a 10-2 campaign, and we'll go to an Orange Bowl, and we'll face Georgia Tech, or we'll go to an Orange Bowl, and we'll face Carson Palmer and the USC Trojans. But pretty much year in and year out, it's always, you look at like the win total for Iowa every year, FanDuel, DraftKings, it's usually always 7.5 or 8.5. It's right there. Is not much wiggle room. Growing up in Iowa, Kirk Ferentz has been there since 1999. You expect an 8-4 year. And a lot of people, that is fine. It suffices. You can get by with that. But anytime anyone has ever brought up, man, whenever Kirk's time is up, like, Iowa can do better. Can Iowa do better than that? Can Iowa do better? And so many people freak out because they're fine with 8-4. And they worry that if Kirk isn't here, it could be far worse. And it very well might be. Like, you look at Wisconsin, and when they hired Luke Fickell, it was thought, this is the step up. This is now the move we made to potentially become a team that could get into the college football playoff as it starts to expand. And it has gone south for Wisconsin. And Wisconsin in the program and how it was in the late 90s, early 2000s right now looks like a shell of itself. However, I do not fault Wisconsin for stepping into the box and taking a swing. When they hired Fickell, there wasn't a person out there that said, wow, that's a horrible hire. This is going to be a disaster. It has turned out to be that. But Wisconsin took the swing because they were like, we're good with the 8-4, 9-3, but we think maybe we can do a little better than who it was Paul Chryst. Maybe we can do a little bit better. And they took a swing. And again, it backfired. But the administration was done with living in that sweet spot of 8-4, done being content with that. And a lot of people will point out, like, well, it didn't work out. Well, Wisconsin will have to try to take another swing at some point if it doesn't work out with Fickell. But I have never been one where it's like, I am content for a prolonged period of time just living with that status quo. If you can take a bigger bite out of the apple, take a bigger bite out of the apple. If it causes you some uncomfortability to take that bigger swing, still take the bigger swing. And so I look at, like, I could stay right in the Big Ten. Many Iowa fans, right, we're fine with 8-4, and you can live with that. Some will say, man, could it be better? And I look at a program like Indiana with Curt Cignetti. Does Indiana have the resources financially with the NIL? Do they have the recruiting paths that we've seen carved out throughout the decades by Ohio State and Michigan and now Oregon and even like UCLA and USC in the Big Ten? Hell no. But Indiana took a swing. They hired Curt Cignetti. They're number 2 in the nation. They went to the playoff last year. They're well on their way to the playoff this year. Had you said 3-4 years ago, hey, Indiana's going to take a swing at a head coach, and they're going to be number 2 in the nation, they're going to be well on their way to well-deserved back-to-back playoff berths. Keep in mind, they beat Oregon in Oregon this year. And so if you're ever of that mind where it's like, I'm okay with 8-4, look at what Indiana's doing. Little old Indiana, the Hoosiers, a basketball school with Curt Cignetti. And so that's why I am never, ever, ever okay with people who are like, well, who are you going to get that's better? I can't stand that. And so we can circle back to Matt LaFleur now. We got off the beaten path there a little bit. That's right. LaFleur does a lot of things well. The game managing often slips through the cracks. The picking and choosing of when to be aggressive isn't a sustainable model when it lacks a lot of logic. Like I look at Dan Campbell in Detroit, and you could be terrified watching Dan Campbell with how, he manages a game. But I'll tell you this, that Detroit offense pretty much always knows when they're going to go for it, when they're not, when the field goal unit will come out, when they're not. Like, Dan Campbell is very, very consistent. You can say, well, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. Blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. I'm saying it still helps that team knows exactly how the buttons are going to be pushed by Dan Campbell. With the Packers, it's like, we're going to be aggressive here at the end of the first half against Dallas. Now we're going to shell up in overtime when we have a chance to drive down the field and win in overtime. Like, it doesn't make sense. We're going to send the field goal unit out to tie the game in Arizona. No, I changed my mind. Boom, timeout, send the offense back out there. We're going to go for it on 4th and 8 at the 13, down a touchdown with 11 minutes left and a full array of our timeouts left. Like, it's all over the place. And I think you just have to wonder, with the pressure building, the policy angle of this, doesn't want a lame duck coach contractually, how this thing plays out. And for Matt LaFleur, you want, like, can he fully trust Jordan Love? Will he fully trust Jordan Love? Can LaFleur in year 7 become more situationally sound, or is this just what it is at this point? You know, all those questions still exist. You let me know what you think. But yeah, it's a hot button topic this week, and I kind of fall in the middle. I like Matt LaFleur as head coach. I'm very happy Matt LaFleur is the current head coach of the Green Bay Packers, but there's some stuff that has to get fixed. But I often wonder and go down the path of, is it going to get fixed, or is this just what it is in year 7, and you hope that you have enough to get over some of those shortcomings. Again, let me know what you guys and gals think. Always appreciative of all the support. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. We'll see you next time.